Welcome to Yee's Law Journal. Today we're diving into one of the biggest antitrust stories of recent years, the EU's massive $1.06 billion fine against Intel, and how, after a long legal battle, this fine ended up being overturned. So, Alice, what's the main point we're tackling here?
Great to be here, Josh. The core issue revolves around what's called the As Efficient Competitor Test, or AEC Test. It's an economic tool that plays a crucial role in assessing whether a dominant company, like Intel, unfairly uses its market power to push out rivals. In this case, Intel's practices were put under a microscope, and the test was central to the EU court's decision to overturn the fine. But let's start by setting the scene.
Absolutely. Picture this. In the early 2000s, Intel was the top player in the CPU market, right? From 2002 to 2007, Intel used conditional rebates and incentive programs to encourage major computer manufacturers, like Dell and HP, to stick with Intel chips and avoid using AMD's x86 CPUs. In 2009, the European Commission ruled that these actions were aimed at excluding AMD from the market. They argued that Intel's loyalty rebates were an abuse of market dominance under Article 102 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, and Intel was slapped with the historic $1.06 billion fine.
Right, and that fine became one of the largest ever imposed in an EU antitrust case. But Intel wasn't about to back down. They appealed the decision to the General Court in 2014, which initially upheld the fine. Not giving up, Intel took it to the European Court of Justice, and in a 2017 ruling, the European Court of Justice found a crucial oversight. The General Court hadn't properly examined all the relevant factors, including the results of the AEC test. The case was sent back to the General Court for a more thorough review.
That brings us to the next twist. When the General Court reviewed the case again in 2022, they found that the European Commission had failed to fully establish that Intel's rebates would indeed have had an anti-competitive effect, especially given the errors in their AEC test analysis. Fast forward to 2024, and the European Court of Justice upheld this decision. It was a massive win for Intel.
It really was. And it's all because the AEC test became the crux of the matter. So, Josh, let's break it down for our listeners. What exactly is this As Efficient Competitor Test, and why does it carry so much weight in antitrust cases?
The AEC test is essentially a way to assess if a dominant company's conduct makes it impossible for a competitor who is as efficient as the dominant company to survive in the market. Here's how it works. Imagine there's a hypothetical competitor with the same cost structure and efficiency as Intel. The test then asks if this competitor could realistically compete if Intel's pricing or rebate strategy is in play.
In simpler terms, if the competitor can't survive under the dominant firm's conditions, it suggests that the dominant firm's actions may have unfairly hindered market competition. For Intel, the European Commission had to show that AMD, if it were as efficient as Intel, couldn't compete due to Intel's rebates and incentives.
Exactly. The AEC test typically involves three main steps. First, cost calculation. The test assesses the dominant firm's costs, especially their average avoidable cost, AAC, and long-run average incremental cost, LRAIC. Second, effective price calculation. This is the price that an equally efficient competitor would need to charge to offset the effect of the dominant firm's rebates. Finally, market behavior assessment. This involves comparing that effective price with the dominant firm's cost structure. If the competitor can't match the price and cover their costs, then the test suggests the dominant firm's actions could unfairly exclude competition.
And in Intel's case, the Commission used this test to argue that Intel's rebates forced OEMs, like Dell and HP, to almost exclusively choose Intel chips over AMD's. The Commission claimed that for AMD to win these OEM contracts, they'd need to sell CPUs at such a low price that they wouldn't be profitable. The loyalty rebates made it economically unfeasible for an equally efficient AMD to compete.
Yes, but here's where it gets interesting. The European Court of Justice in 2017 found that the General Court hadn't properly considered Intel's claims about errors in the AEC test results. When the General Court looked deeper, They identified issues like incomplete data and incorrect extrapolations in the Commission's analysis. So they concluded that the Commission didn't adequately demonstrate that Intel's rebates harmed competition.
It's a critical lesson in ensuring robust evidence before imposing fines. And it goes beyond just Intel. The Intel case highlighted the AEC test's importance, but also its limitations. For example, the AEC test assumes the presence of a similarly efficient competitor in the market, but in many cases, such a competitor doesn't actually exist. So relying solely on this test could overlook real market complexities.
That's true. The test also requires a huge amount of detailed economic data, which isn't always easy to obtain or analyze accurately. In high-tech industries with rapid innovation and high entry barriers, even an equally efficient competitor might struggle to compete with an incumbent like Intel, which has years of market dominance.
So where does this leave us? In short, the Intel case shows that while the AEC test is valuable in antitrust assessments, it has limits and should be applied cautiously. It can't be the sole basis for judgments in complex markets like tech.
Exactly. And as antitrust cases grow more intricate, especially in technology, authorities might need to adopt a more nuanced approach. It's a balancing act protecting market competition without stifling a company's right to offer discounts or incentives. As we saw here, if that balance isn't struck, it risks upending massive fines and changing the course of antitrust enforcement.
So what does this mean for the future? We might see the AEC test continue to evolve or be complemented by other tools to adapt to modern market dynamics. For companies, this case underscores the importance of understanding the competitive impact of their pricing strategies.
That's right. And for policymakers, Intel's case is a reminder to carefully apply antitrust laws to avoid unintended consequences. Who knows? Maybe one day, we'll see a similar case coming out of China's antitrust landscape, as these global principles get adopted and adapted in different jurisdictions.
Couldn't agree more, Josh. And that's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, remember to subscribe, share, and drop us a comment. Let us know if there are other cases or topics you'd like us to unpack. Your support keeps us going.
Until next time, take care and keep an eye on the ever-evolving world of law.